Hello and welcome to Amol Parashar to Tiffin Talks. Thank you so much for joining us once again, Amol. It's such a pleasure. And Feels Like Ishq has really done well. It must be feeling good.
Yeah, it feels good. You put your heart and soul into all of your work,
Right,
and when it works and people like it and it all comes together well, I think it's always a heartwarming feeling.
right. Tell me why you think Feels Like Ishq has been received so well. We've been talking a lot about the dark and twisty world of streaming.
Yeah.
Was it that one refreshing thing that we were looking for, or was it also the other aspect that you talked about? The rise of the beta male, which, by the way, has
Yeah, I think
got the imagination of a lot of people.
it could be that. I think it's both, maybe, and maybe other things as well. It is true that much of the content on streaming platforms, or at least much of what has become really famous, has mostly been in the drama crime space, which is also probably because people were hungry for that. Maybe we hadn't seen like really tight, gripping drama and crime on the mainstream film screen or the TV screen. So people were definitely hungry for that. It's clear that they wanted that. But at the same time, to balance it out, I think there was maybe, although when internet started out, when the web shows started out, they were all kind of the light-hearted slice of life space, and then it became big scale drama and crime, and the slice of life, relatable day to day stories, I think somewhere got lost. So I think that is something that which people always go back to. Like, you might want to watch a big absorbing drama or a crime thing, or like mystery, but you also once in a while need that, just like sit down and watch and just feel good about life in general. I think people need that kind of content, which is what most people have messaged me also about. That after a long time, maybe they were just able to watch it without thinking, this is something serious. I will need to take out time for this. I'll watch it tomorrow properly with focus. This is something that probably you could just watch with your friends, with your family, with your partner while eating. So it's kind of light watch in that sense. And I believe that was the idea, because that's what, even when we were discussing the scripts and everything, it came to me, it was pretty simple that way, just two characters, banter. So I was also curious if that is what we were going for, and it was reconfirmed to me that is exactly what we were going for. We were not going for anything like people dying and blood flying and cars exploding. So I guess, and I had fun with that. I have fun with that format because I think there is always more to do as actors in that. Because and which is what my director Ruchir, who's a very good friend of mine, also told me. He also said, we are not trying to do anything very. The story or the twist and the turns are not what is going to capture the audience. What is going to capture the audience is your performances. It's you. It's the two of you, because it's a conversation. It's the characters and it's the relatability of the conversation. So I think that also, that probably there is a little more um, responsibility on you as an actor in a format like that. Although it doesn't seem,
Yeah,
it seems easy. But that is the I think that's the best kind of work, when you can make things look easy.
right.
Is actually the measure of anybody's skill and talent, I believe.
How often have you been compared to your namesake, uh, Palekar?
Not professionally, I would say.
Huh.
But of course, growing up, if there is somebody famous with with your name, you get teased with that name. And my last name sounds a lot like that,
Exactly.
Parashar and Palekar. So like a lot of people or my friends in school would call me Palekar, or it was an easy nickname to go for. But yeah, but I don't think professionally people have pointed that out. Maybe also the kind of work I'm doing, the generation that's watching my work, I don't know how many of them are really connected to the work of Mr. Amol Palekar, which I remember growing up on and loving those films. And now, as an actor, you realize the skill
Yeah.
more and more of
Right.
of that genre and of that acting.
Right.
Because we grew up thinking all the big scale was the big drama, and I was
The Amitabh
performing.
Bachchan was the difficult.
Yeah, yeah. So that is what used to stand out as performances. And I think now, more as you grow up, as you mature, maybe you look at those stories, you look at those nuances of performances of filmmaking, and now as an active actor, that is probably sometimes more difficult.
Right. Amol, the other thing was that, which you told me, was that you got to look pretty and got to do, act with pretty people, which is so nice also, because that is the conventional way one makes a debut in Bollywood, and that has
True,
not been your conventional way.
true,
You've
true,
not
true.
ever fit that mold. But yet, it's refreshing sometimes to get that kind of environment. The
Yeah, we
nice
all
car,
like
the nice girl.
correct, correct. We've all grown up watching those films. So in fact, the idea of becoming an actor for many people, I didn't grow up with the idea of becoming an actor when I grew up. But I think many people, I believe, when they look at films or when they were watching films as kids in the 90s or the 2000s, people who are around me now as actors, the seed idea was formed from that kind of cinema.
Right.
Or the romantic films or the action films. So I think deep down, everybody wants to probably do it once or be a part of it or experience that. So I think conventionally, I got to experience it, I guess, for the first time as a as a conventional rom
Yeah.
com. And like you said, pretty
Nice
locations,
clothes.
pretty this thing,
Yeah.
expensive cars and clothes and suits and lehengas. So yeah, it was fun.
And the other thing that was very interesting, which struck me, was that the reference point of this film was Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. Whereas for my generation, it was always, Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge. So the
Correct.
reference points are also changing, aren't they?
Correct, 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 correct. I think yeah. I mean, this is what probably these characters have grown up watching,
Yeah,
and those are the references they remember. I
right.
remember once talking to a young editor,
Um,
and I was sitting and we were trying to work on something, and I was trying to give him some, like I was trying to explain what I had in mind to him, and I said, you remember Bazigar, the Bazigar mein how like Shah Rukh Khan, and he was blank. Like he looked at me, and after I think after having that conversation for a couple of minutes, I asked him, "Do you know Bazigar?" It's not even he had heard of that film. It was almost like a vague, uh, "What are you talking about? Maybe give me some other reference." And I was that's telling, that's telling of maybe time passing, culture changing.
yeah,
So I guess what Dil Chahta Hai was 20 years ago.
right.
Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara was the next part of that, like a road trip and the references and the jokes.
Yeah,
So I guess that keeps changing, and it's a nice hat tip also because probably that's the nature of cinema we were going for.
right.
Like you said, pretty locations.
Right.
Nobody's worried about the budget. Ski. Do I have money to go to Tomatino or not? It's not they're all those things are taken care of for those characters.
Right. And if not that, then you always have a rich girlfriend to fall back on. As she keeps saying, I have money. I will.
Yeah, yeah. That's also like telling of her character, maybe.
Yeah,
It's coming from a certain personality, certain class. And there's some Delhi references. I always say, see, Delhi is not always what we show it in films. In fact, I don't fit that template, I believe, because when I came here and people said they were looking for a Delhi actor, it's a character from Delhi. And if they saw me and met me and spoke to me, like, not Delhi enough. That was very surprising for me.
what defines Delhi for Mumbai or for
I
Bollywood?
think I think for Bollywood it is Ranveer Singh from
Band Baja Barat.
And Baja Bharat.
For the longest time, I was convinced
Or
that
Fukre or you know
for the longest time I was convinced Ranveer was from Delhi. I mean, it was such a
yeah,
surprise to
he
know
was very good. He was
that.
very good in that film. Yeah,
That's again a reference point, isn't it, for a lot of movies now? Band Baja Barat. I think
it
that's
is. It
wedding.
definitely is.
Yeah,
Band Baja Bharat, Jab We Met. I think you'll also see traces of Jab We Met in this
exactly.
film. Many people pointed that out.
Yeah,
At least the balance between the two characters or the kind of banter and the personalities were probably. So, but these become. I mean, you know that these films have lasted. If you
Right.
can still reference them, if you can still say Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, and people are still saying, oh, I got a Jab We Met vibe, or I got a Dil Chahta Hai vibe. So these, when you hear things like that, you know that somewhere, whatever, how much ever money those films made at that time whenever they came out, but you know the kind of impact they
Yeah.
had on whoever saw them. And it kind of became references for a generation.
Right.
Government was a reference for a generation. I remember giving so many screen tests
Uh,
saying, this is Shahid from Jab We Met, and these characters have stuck, or Ranveer from Band Baja Bara. These were
right.
like, they become references for writing material and
Right.
performances.
Right. But that's the trick then. It can become a trap. You can become self-referential, which sometimes Hindi cinema tends to do.
Yeah,
It doesn't become inventive or original
yeah,
enough. It
yeah.
tends to repeat itself. So every 20 years you have some movie that is reference to death, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
And
That's true.
and then of course some of the older people don't retire. So what do you do? You know, they
Yeah,
will
I mean, it's
continue to
always
make some version of themselves.
it's an interesting journey that, I mean, I've probably reached that point in the future, but it's better to be prepared
Right,
to. I mean, I would like everybody. Nobody wants to be irrelevant,
right,
but I think that takes work, and
right,
I would like to keep reminding myself that I can't become a reference of myself or a caricature of myself, and sometimes we'll have to go into uncomfortable territories to stay relevant. Because
right,
I think when you're in the arts or in the profession of storytelling, it is relevance is very important because eventually you are telling it to an audience. You're not just making up the story for yourself.
hmm,
So I guess that is something that will take work. I am prepared for that,
right.
and I want to be able to be aware, and I will keep reminding my friends also to to keep poking me and
Right,
reminding me if I'm falling into those traps.
right. But that comes with success, isn't it? Then it becomes very difficult to step
Mm,
outside your comfort zone. For instance, what we were saying the other day,
mm.
now your struggle is to choose the best of three or four.
Correct.
Earlier,
Correct.
your struggle was to get work. Now your struggle
Correct.
is to see what to say no to or what to say yes
Correct.
to.
Correct.
And it comes with increasingly as
Mm,
you become more and more successful.
mm.
People will say, "Sir, जो आपने उसमें किया था, वो आप कर सकते हैं." I presume that's the
No.
kind of language.
Yeah, yeah, that happens. That happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Then
Also, I think people, and I noticed this, and I started having these conversations with my directors. I think sometimes what happens is that if they know that you are good enough,
yeah,
your basics are in place, and you become a little famous, or you come with a body of work, so that maybe because of a status thing, like sometimes I found my directors hesitating
uh,
to really like push me too much
right,
in case I got uncomfortable or I got upset.
right,
So I a couple of times I've, like, in the beginning now, I've made this thing that I'll sometimes just have a casual chat with my director saying, no, don't feel shy.
right,
Please, for my sake and for your sake and for the sake, don't feel shy that should I make him do this the fifth time? Should I
right,
make it? And probably they have their own set of experiences with other people. I said, I will do it. Just you have to say what you want, and I'll try my best to
right,
achieve that. Because I think that also starts to happen. You because it's okay. Like, if they see the first take or the second take and it seems fine, and they don't want to like push you too much in
right,
case you judge them or in
right,
case you get. So that, I think, I observed a little bit a couple of years ago starting to happen. Mildly in some projects, maybe where the filmmaker or the director was young and he or she was starting out, so they would feel a little hesitant
right,
to push you too much. So you can also, I think, with too much experience, also get into that trap where
yeah,
people are suddenly, all the people you're working with are, let's say, less experienced than you or younger than you, and they might just not have. They might just feel scared in in front of your personality, and
yeah.
they might not be pushing you too much. And then you're just comfortable. Everybody's just saying good things all the time. Brilliant
You're so
take,
happy.
beautiful, so good. You are so good. And you're like, yeah, it's fine. Everybody's happy.
And who
And
doesn't want to hear good things about oneself?
yeah, and why would you question that? Because it's not like they're lying outright. You know that they like it. They're enjoying. They're actually like fascinated by what you're doing. But it's just that maybe somewhere what what can we do better? That question is not being asked.
Right. What do you think the southern industries are doing right, Amol, currently? When you see Malayalam and when you see
Hmm.
Tamil and Telugu, there seems to be a lot more exciting stuff happening there, isn't
Correct. I'm very curious too. I am also looking for. I think everybody's looking for
it?
that answer. My general thought is that I think they are doing this. They are some of them, some of those actors and some of those filmmakers are I think consciously trying to break out from their last film, the last thing they wrote, the last film they directed or they acted in. Taking for example, right now everybody's talking about Fahad Fasil,
Hard Fasil.
and rightly so.
Yeah.
And you pick out his last 5 films, and I don't think in those choices
Yeah.
there's any sense of your last thing worked like this. That
Yeah.
was a bit of an action thriller, so let me just do another action thriller. And he's formed a company now where I think so that he can he can decide for himself what film or what kind of film he wants to do next, and let's do something different each time. I saw Joji, for example, very recently. I was so impressed. I was so envious. It seemed like they were having so much fun making this film, and they made it under those constraints. So, I mean, the pandemic is there. Maybe all those restrictions catch up. We can't go outside. Can we make a story in one house with just a bunch of characters? These are limitations. But even out of that, if you are able to sit down and derive something so interesting, I was very envious. I saw that film. I was like, oh, I mean, I should also, then I talked to my friends and say, oh, let's just do anything. Let's just make a Warsaw film, if at all. Just tell our own stories.
Yeah. Exactly. I think, Meera Nair said it best. I mean, she said there's no lack of stories in India. You just have to look out of the window and
Correct.
there's a story happening at every corner. And your own story, I mean, what can be more authentic than that? You don't always have to make your own story, but what you know of, that's also
Mm.
an authentic experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there's a hesitation, isn't it, in Mumbai? I think because of the scale of things, perhaps.
Maybe. I know that before digital, it was, and you also understand the other side of the table, because I was a writer, or I still sometimes write with people. So you are in those rooms, you are having those conversations, films are being mounted in those rooms, casting is being talked about, production is being talked about, scale is being talked about, and you realize that I can, as an actor, I can complain that why just they don't take a better actor if they have a choice. And then you realize that it is probably not just that, because they're having to juggle multiple things, which one of the most prominent things is a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's and when a lot of money you're investing into something, there is, I mean, it takes a certain amount of faith, a
Right.
leap of faith. But how much leap you want to take is a personal decision, I think. So I did understand some constraints of the film business, because if you're spending so much money out of your own pocket, then you wanted some kind of feeling of safety that I'm going to recover this money from the box office or when I eventually sell the film, and therefore some decisions are made according to that. But I think with the advent of streaming platforms, and very interestingly, the streaming platforms are willing to take these risks.
Yeah.
Uh, so all the stories that I used to, many of the younger filmmakers who are making shows and films on streaming platforms now, I think many of these stories already existed.
Yeah.
I know many of these filmmakers already had these ideas in their heads. It's just that they couldn't find the right place, or they couldn't convince the right people before digital happened. And now what's happening is digital is saying you get us something new.
Yeah.
And this has happened. Like I've also had sometimes I chat with certain people from different platforms. They're saying, "Oh, do you have something? Do you have an idea? Do you have a story?" And I realized that this was the first time in my life I was hearing somebody saying, "No, no, this sounds like that. We
So
want
hot.
something new.
Yeah.
We don't want anything that sounds like anything else."
Yeah.
which was like very refreshing, because earlier, if it didn't sound like anything else, it was mostly a no.
Detective, yeah.
Yeah, because what is this like? What is it like? Like, what is this? Which film I would try to make? They give us a reference. Always had to be a reference, or a certain parallel of scale or storytelling. So I think that is something that is very interesting, I believe, right now. So hopefully, I guess, and it is happening. Little bit is happening, but I know what you're saying. There is, and we are acknowledging that. Everybody's acknowledging, and everybody's curious. What is the Malayalam film industry doing? Like, what are they eating, and what are the conversations they are having?
Yeah, that'll be interesting. What are they eating? Look at the Great Indian Kitchen. What a fantastic film. It's
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I've heard great things
yeah,
about the film.
yeah. So,
I,
Amol,
I did a Malayalam film. In fact, this was before any of the digital thing happened. I was in a Malayalam film
which one?
called Millie. It was a film called Millie.
Uh-huh.
Um, it had Amala Paul in it as the
Wow.
titular character. She was playing Millie,
Uh-huh.
and I had a bit of a cameo in the film. I saw the film much later. I didn't see the film then. I mean, it was very interesting because that was probably the old school of
Right.
filmmaking. It was directed by Mr. Rajesh Pillai, who directed Traffic, a film that I had acted in.
Which you, yeah, which yeah.
So he had done the Malayalam original, then he made the Hindi remake of that, and we kind of formed an equation. So he called me to Kerala to shoot for his Malayalam film. Without He didn't tell me anything. There's no, I don't think there was a bound script. He was just like, he would just wake up in the morning, think of a scene, make me do it. He spoke in Malayalam. Half the time I didn't know what I was saying. It was an interesting experience. But I could still see at that time that uh, some of the films that were being talked about, because they told me about a lot of films to watch. I was
Right.
in Kerala working with all these people who were from that industry, and they were saying, "Have you seen this? And have you seen this? This is," and even the one-liners of those films used to sound so interesting.
Right.
It was like, oh, I mean, these are mainstream Malayalam actors working in these. These are mainstream Malayalam films. They're not even like a parallel. They're not calling it a parallel Malayalam industry. These are mainstream Malayalam films. And that was, I think, my first glimpse into the kind of experimentation, or the kind of risk taking, or the kind of inventiveness that existed in that culture at that time, which I think is now coming to fruition. Now it's reaching its peak with, I saw Angamali Diaries, I saw Jallikattu. I was like, what is, how are they making these films? How,
When was it that you acted in Millie?
that was a while ago. That was, I think, in 2015,
Oh, must watch it.
16.
Fun.
I think it must be somewhere on one of the streaming
Must be
platforms.
on some platform, of course.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to ask you, since we also talked a little about other actors, the band of actors that you sort of entered the industry with, and I think all of you had more or less the same struggles. I
Hmm.
wanted to understand. It's been a year since Sushant Singh Rajput passed away. Have things changed? Was it a tipping point in any way for the industry, Amol? Did you feel that? And did you know him personally?
I didn't know him personally. I had, I think, just like spent a moment with him outside an office once.
Right.
We were outside, I'd gone for some meeting. Probably he was also there for some meeting. I'm kind of like just was standing outside for a couple of minutes, was talking to somebody else. But we were standing in the same circle. We just got introduced to each other. It's like, so you realize, I think, what I also realized is when that happened and the kind of things it made me feel, I was very surprised, because I wouldn't count him as a friend. I wouldn't count him as somebody I knew closely or personally. This was the only kind of meeting I remember, which was not nothing personal in that. It was just very formal, very nice, just saying hello to each other. But it seemed to affect me a lot.
Yeah.
And we were going through lockdown, and it was like already this situation, this external situation that we were all in. It took me a few days to process it, honestly, and if the tragedy of it wasn't enough, then there was a lot of circles around it, which was just made it like it made me more and more sad with every passing day.
Right.
I had to, I think, eventually switch off. Uh, So, maybe because I also ended up sharing something on social media, which was a very personal thing, which I
Right.
thought was a lot of people must be feeling. And it did resonate with a lot of people, but it got me some attention that I didn't want.
Right.
And so I had to shut off for a few days. I think people also started pointing out how he was an engineer, I'm an engineer,
Exactly.
so it
Too
was
many
very
parallels. Too many
uh,
parallels. No.
many parallels, yeah. And this was the fact that I knew, but at that time, because it was also, I think it was almost sounding like he was he was different because he was, an engineer, for
Right.
example.
Right.
And you are alone at home going through lockdown, and you're suddenly going into dark places.
Right.
Your head is going all over the place, and you're thinking, is that a problem? Like, is that going to be a problem for me also?
Is being too intelligent a problem? I mean,
Being too intelligent, or being like, culturally different, or having different interests. It was just, nobody was saying it directly, but there was,
yeah.
sorry, yeah, no, I don't think nobody was saying it directly, but there was an I think there was a feeling of he was different. So does was that a reason,
Right.
that he was feeling a certain way, or he
Right.
felt lonely, or we don't know what he was feeling like. I would not claim to know anything
Yeah.
about what he was going through, but just like having all the, and you're trying to find those answers, I think, which is what happened. Like, everybody suddenly, the whole country was confused, like, how
Right.
can it happen, what was going, and nobody can know
Right.
what is going on in somebody's mind, but people were trying to guess, people were trying to join dots. Some of those dots were personally uncomfortable for me and making me feel very weird. So I had to, like, really switch off. It took me quite some time to recover from that. Because, and thankfully I had some solid friends around me.
Hmm.
But it was yeah. And so I don't know. I don't know if, like, what was supposed to change. I don't know.
I think the whole attitude towards outsiders. Is there a particular attitude towards outsiders?
Um, there is it's, as an outsider, it's easy to feel like that,
Yeah.
because there will be times that when you will be given less preference over somebody else
Hmm.
who has who's grown up around
Exactly.
certain people, or grown up in the industry, or if you've grown up, if you had like lunches with filmmakers as a child and you've grown up around them, I don't know, you will obviously lose out on some kind of personal preferences. If it is going to be about choosing between me and somebody else who probably, let's say, are equally good actors, or even if I have done my screen test is 5% better than the other person, but they don't know me at all. They
Yeah.
don't know who I am, where I come from, what kind of person I am. And there is somebody, they've like, ये तो अपना बच्चा है. You've seen that kid growing up
Yeah.
in front of you, or you've like, and their parents, the family. So I guess it becomes a, I mean, it's a human flaw for me. Like, that's how I try to tell myself that this is something that all of us, maybe, if not professionally, personally, go through this. We go through personal biases,
Right.
and this is a problem of probably personal biases. And when you are putting in so much money and there's always so much pressure, maybe you just like, it makes it easy to bet on somebody
Right.
than somebody you don't know. What I think I so I don't like so I try not to complain about that. What I try to complain about is then that don't be both. Don't
Right.
be don't give in to your biases, but also want to say the right things in
Right.
public, or
Right.
interviews. So let's just accept that, this is how it is. If I'm going to make a film, and if I'm going to make a safe choice out of
Right.
whatever reasons, or a choice that is maybe born out of some personal biases, I will just like to say, "Ki, haan, yaar, I know this person, I'm more comfortable with this person, so I'm
That's
working with this person." I wouldn't want to go out and say that talent must win, and you know
and
all of that.
that's
So that is
hypocritical.
Anji.
That's hypocritical.
That's hypocritical, and that's something not, that people don't realize also sometimes, I feel.
Yeah.
Because I meet sometimes people in real life who you've known from social media, so you form a certain idea from the kind of things they say on social media or their Twitter or their interviews, and then you meet them in real life and like, one second, it's not exactly the same person. There's some disconnect, and they're not even realizing that. So it's not like, oh, they're consciously lying in
Yeah.
public and being a certain way in private. It's just, yeah, I don't know what it is. I also try to figure this out for myself, because at least one thing I learned is I don't want to fall into these traps. Maybe these are
Yeah.
some biases that one tends to fall into. So I would like to keep a check
Right.
on my own behavior, or at least try and not be performative in my opinions.
Right.
Sometimes you have to say the politically correct thing, I think,
Huh.
just for the sake of your own sanity.
Yeah.
But as much as possible, yeah,
Be true
that's
to
something
yourself.
I don't want to be performative in my public speakings or opinion sharing and all of that.
Right. Although that's a big trap, isn't it? Because that's the acceptable thing.
That is, but I also think that everybody is smart. Like, this is one thing that social media has taught me, is that people are very smart. I mean, you might or might not like them and their opinions, but yeah, people know. Even if they don't point it out, people know.
As they, I think what this famously or infamously Mahesh Bhatt had called it, everyone has a very highly developed inbuilt bullshit detector.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, and they know it. Like, even if they can't articulate it, sometimes they know. I've heard people say, "Yeah, no, कुछ vibe सही नहीं है, bro. There's
Yeah,
something wrong
there's
with
a
this
fake.
person or that
There's
person.
something.
Oh, it just sounds कुछ ऐसा, like something not
Yeah,
genuine." And so people catch on to that, and especially and people are harsher on actors these days. I think that's one thing that should have changed uh, in the last 1 year.
but it
In
has.
fact, it's become the opposite.
Yeah,
I mean, one thing that probably we could have learned, that actors are not probably, you know it's not always what it seems. Like, oh, they're rich and they're happy and they're partying all the time and they have all the money and the fame. There's nothing wrong in their lives. So I think that is something that I believe should have been at least one of the takeaways from that conversation. But it eventually, for some reason, for some strange reason, some of those reasons we know, but for all of those reasons, it has become the opposite. It's suddenly become like all of us, like, all, not, thankfully not me, but many, like, as a community, it has become, people are hating actors more than.
yeah. आप लोग तो ऐसे ही हैं सब.
So,
हाँ,
and
ऐसे
that's
कैसे? And nobody will define ऐसे. What does ऐसे mean?
correct. And it's all one single brush.
Yeah,
So which is what I try to, like, a couple of times on my social media with somebody who I thought, sounded like somebody I could have a conversation. I said, "Ki, what do you mean? Like, if what do you do, for example? Say, I'm a software engineer." I said, "So, I mean, are you answerable for every software engineer in this country?" Of course not. No, I mean, just like think, just sit for 2 minutes and think. Like, if you are not answerable for what another software engineer is doing, and I'm not saying all you software engineers are like this,
hmm,
then how does it work this way, that you're just like one brush and saying you actors and you industry and you Bollywood? Like, how is this, like, how can all of us be the same person? We're
right.
not on the same WhatsApp group, and it's like exchanging notes, and we're not the same people with the same sense of humor or opinions or political thought or whatever. So it's very first. It was, I think, what I learned was suddenly that this, maybe what maybe because of the nature of how it has been the last 50 years, people think that this is a different world altogether. That
Hmm.
this is one set of people who live in a bubble and who, like, all talk and walk and eat the same way.
And wake up
But,
every morning and decide, अच्छा आज मैं ये करूँगा तुम वो करो and
like everything is so planned and everything is so calculated. I'm not saying it is not. Of course, there is
stay.
PR, and there is this, all of those things, and
Oh,
this
yeah.
media and your relationships and all of that. But I mean, it's just maybe just like any other profession, and thankfully I know I also come from a world where I many of my friends and my families have nothing to do with this. So I think I'm able to speak in that language. I'm able to say, here, if you're working as, let's say, if you work in the oil industry, how are you answerable for everybody who works in the oil industry? How is that even possible? You have to just maybe just think and not, because I think it's also like picking up from, it's an energy that everybody's picking up from each other. Yeah, yeah, let's just like, it's a mob thing, how people say
Right.
on social media. But so I try to humanize myself for them. I'm just
Right.
like you, and I was, and I am. I just happen to be in this profession. I just
Right.
happen to be an actor. So it doesn't make me suddenly somebody who's come from another planet altogether, who thinks and eats and doesn't have feelings, doesn't feel bad, is never sad. I also feel bad. If you throw stones at me, it hurts me. For some people think, "Yare, why did you
Oh,
become famous then? Why did you become famous?" People ask, why did you want to
right.
become famous if you don't want stones thrown at you? I said, Are, how is that connected? It's almost like if you're walking on the road, so I have the liberty to throw a stone at you because you're famous. And if you don't want this, then it is
Yeah.
your fault because you wanted to be famous. You should have been ready for this. Right? It's a very strange
Right.
logic.
I want to ask you, Amol, in conclusion, how to keep yourself so sane?
I think one thing, at least at this stage of my life, what I'm realizing is the people around me. And this is something that I told myself time and again over the years. And I told myself again last year, as you were saying, we were going through a difficult time, all of us, as a country, as a society, as an industry, as a professional. Uh, I yeah, I just, you need the right, and the right people is not. It's, I don't know how to define it, because sometimes, like how we were discussing it, it can't be just the people who just say yes to
Yeah.
everything that you do and who never disagree with you. It is I like to have smart, sensible people, sensitive people around me who who I can learn from, and who I can. So it's almost like a mutual uh, relationship, I think. It's like, it's almost like how you choose a partner, I guess. You want somebody, not not one box. It
Yeah.
has to be like a balance of things. Like I think I'm not able to articulate it really well.
So I think it's
But yeah, I think it's the people, and I need to have like genuine faith in what they're saying, because I think what ends up happening many a times, and I've been here for a few years, so I know, is that you make a lot of short-term friendships.
yeah.
You get into a project, you get along really well. You think, oh, we're having fun, we're hanging out, we're sharing things about our lives also with each
Right.
other. Then the project ends, then you move on, and then maybe everybody gets busy with other things. Then you meet some new people, and then you make friends with them. So you like, there's little parts of you,
Right.
parts of friendships, or
Right.
parts of the friends that you have. But maybe you need some people, so, and because you're not always constantly in the same intensity of friendship, it's like, it's a halfway friendship. So I realized that I needed some full friendships. I needed some people who I fully have faith in, who I can call anytime, and if I have a question, they will give me a genuine answer, irrespective of how well I'm doing or how badly I'm doing, or whether they want to upset me or not upset me. Or so I think that is something that I have worked on.
Right.
That is something I've invested in, because you need to keep investing in that. It's easy to forget. It's easy for me to just go to shoot, make some new friends, and then just,
Hang out.
yeah, keep floating around, which will happen, which is going to happen anyway. But while you're floating around, uh, if you are also able to have some solid pillars in your life, it always, you can always fall back on that. So I think that's what something that I realize I must invest in, and it does take a little bit of time and effort to build that.
What next, Amol?
I'm not shot many things in the last 1 2 years because of the situation. So this was something I had shot. Then there is a film that I had shot before the
Yeah.
pandemic hit. It's a comedy that I shot with Vishesh Films, and very unlike any of the what Vishesh Films is known for. And
Yes.
an out and out like comedy. I love this script. It's one of the funniest scripts I've read on paper.
Right.
Hopefully, we've been able to translate that. It's directed by a very good friend of mine again, called Rishabh, who I had worked with before, and we made this film together. I think it's ready, and probably sometime this year it should be out. Now in on an OTT only, I believe. Now
Right.
the theaters are shut,
Yeah.
and and then there is Udham Singh, which it was quite a fulfilling experience. It was a very
Oh,
short, and I'm only a tiny part of it
wonderful with Shoojit Sircar.
with Shoojit sir. Yeah,
Please.
so that I've shot, and I'm playing. It's Udham Singh's story that Vicky's playing
Yeah.
Sardar Udham Singh, and I'm playing this one in the story. I guess I believe like there was some overlap between Udham Singh's life and Shaheed Bhagat Singh's life.
Right.
I got to play Bhagat Singh in the film.
Wow. Really?
Yeah,
That's
I was. Yeah,
fantastic.
it was. Yeah, it was quite an experience.
Yeah.
I'm very nervous about that because it again comes with a lot of
So much
baggage.
history. Yeah. I mean, such wonderful actors have played him before.
Yeah, and it has been played, but I also realized because I studied his writings a little bit. I studied some not so popular things that other people like we have a surface level understanding of who they were. They were revolutionaries. They were fighting for India, and they were fighting for independence, and they were fighting the British. But when I read some of that stuff, I learned, and I think there is much more to read, which I didn't get time for. Is that they they were, and many of these young people, young boys and girls, and especially Bhagat Singh, they were much, much, much more than uh, what what is you can't even define them in one
Absolutely.
sentence, because he more than anything he was a thinker. He was a commentator on a lot of things. He used to write, he used to read, he used to read
Right.
poetry. He was a romantic. He was reading about world history. He was talking about a grassroots revolution.
Right.
He was not talking about independence on paper. There was something more spiritual in what he was saying and what he was, I think, standing up for. And I guess that is what made him who he was, and that was the part, that was the aura, I believe. A 21, 22-year-old boy who was hung at 23
Right.
after a trial. And it's amazing to think, because even his writings, the kind of books he's referencing, and
Ah,
the kind of things he was saying, I was like, damn, this is at 21. He's saying these things, which probably I'm able to understand now at this age, much older than him. And he was saying these things with such beautiful
passionate
articulation,
and
talking about religion, talking about communalism and unity and workers and farmers and students, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful to read all that. Although, I mean, it's like I said in the film, it's a bit of a cameo.
but it's
But,
a wonderful
but I
part.
got a chance. Yeah, I got a chance to read a lot about him. It was very fascinating,
Right.
and I got a chance to work with Shoojit. So it was a very fulfilling experience. We shot only for a few days, but sometimes you come back from a project and you feel good. You feel like you've been part of something good. You've enjoyed yourself. You have it's been a creative, collaborative process. It was a delight to
Right.
shoot with them, with everybody, with Vicky and Shoojit sir and the whole team.
Wow. But quite a bit. And then I guess now there must be some a lot of work happening now.
Yeah, some messages and some calls are are coming in,
Right.
which is obviously going to be like, if any of that happens, and when that happens, mostly going to be towards the end of the year now.
Right. Right.
'Cause we're in July, so I'll probably start something around September.
Right.
So, but again, like you said, and it's interesting. Now everything is this or that.
Oh, yeah.
What happens? So yeah, that's an interesting place to be. Then you also know that although you can't predict it, but that those decisions can define the next couple of years for you. So yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting space to be in. Much better than how it used to be years ago.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Amol, for
Thank you
talking
so
to me
much,
again. It
Kaveree.
was such
Thank
a
you.
pleasure, and really, I
Always.
wish you all the best. And
Thank you
now
so
that
much.
you told me about Bhagat Singh, I can't wait to watch
Yeah,
it.
I'm quite excited, but at
Yeah.
the same time nervous.
No, no, I think it'll be wonderful. Thank you
Yeah.
so very much.
Fingers crossed. Thank you.
All the
Thank you, Kaveree. Thank you.